My name is Brandon Valley. I go by Brandon Valley Nisnansky. I'm a graduate student in the sports science program at East Tennessee State University, and I'm a collegiate strength and conditioning coach at Weber International University in Florida. This presentation will be going over force plate monitoring and the uses at the collegiate strength and conditioning level. The overview will cover the background information on force plates and how they function, how we can minimize error, and then I'll go into the type of test, how we monitor athletes from the metrics given, and how I use actionable data to create training plans. So, force plate technology, we can observe the measurement of forces applied by an athlete and evaluate the data to create a plan of action, whether that is attacking their strengths or attacking their weaknesses. Force plates have the unique ability to measure external ground reaction forces in the vertical, anterior, posterior, and medial lateral planes of motion, which this is unique compared to jump mats, which record vertical jump, RSI, and a few other metrics. So force plates are more dynamic in what they information they can provide to sports scientists and strength and conditioning coaches. When it comes to collecting the data, we need to make sure that we are aware of the protocols put in place so that we minimize error and the data is usable. Minimizing this error is crucial to drawing accurate conclusions because even having 1% of error can cause a large degree in error in some gait measurements, whether this is from user error or the plates had not been calibrated correctly. Force plays such as Bow Performance and Hawkins Dynamics helps to differentiate between jumps, whether it's being peak force, rate of force development, concentric impulse, and other metrics given. Force plate testing, which can involve ballistic, isometric, balance, and dynamic movements, these can track positive progression over 4 years for an athlete at the university setting. So the isometric methylpole, which is good for testing strength and power, we want to see that force increase, but we also want to see that curve move more to the left so that the athlete is producing that force quicker. So if they're producing the same amount of force from year one to year two, but they're able to produce that amount of force quicker than they did in year one, that's a positive progression for that athlete. Going into the counter movement jump, we also want to shift that to the left to where they're spending less time on the ground loading up. They're able to jump high. So if a athlete's vert doesn't improve from year one to year two, but they spend less time on the ground to get that high, that's a positive progression. So anything using force plates, we have more metrics which can show us more progression in an athlete rather than a jump mat, which is just black and white, which gives you your vert RSI, so you don't get to see those extra metrics to see if you improved. So this slide is how I tracked my women's volleyball team with counter movement jumps, tracking their neuromuscular fatigue, with it starting the first day of preseason on the 7th of August, going all the way to the end of conference on the 4th of November. I use this actionable data to regulate practice volume in season or more so conference play, which it helped with having daily meetings with a coaching staff that knew what I wanted to do and they were smart enough to go along with it. So we'd go over their practice plan and how it's going to match up with how the athletes are feeling that day. So obviously, we go beginning of preseason, there's more volume. They're going through an alarm phase of the gas principle. And then once we get to about pre-conference, when we're about to start, that's when some athletes are starting to get better. They're starting to adapt to the training. And that's what we want is for all those greens where that's about their top 90% of their average. And now they're starting to feel great, practices taking over. We're spending less time in the weight room. So me looking at this, I did my job correctly. But in the weight room, they come in, they have three counter movement jumps, and I take that average. So going to lift time decisions, I'll look at the numbers. I'll take if they're below their 90% of their average, all right, we need to take volume off. So when we're pre-season, I'm not too worried about this. But when we're later in season, like this girl right here, she came in at the time she was 90% she was below 90% of her average. So she comes in, she does her jump. She's not happy with her jumps. I have her do the main lift, which is RDLs that day, and then I send her home. Tell her, hey, you need to go take a nap, eat, drink, take a shower, take care of yourself, because we have practice that evening before we play the next day. She comes back that night. I retest her because she was unhappy with her jumps, and it went up 3 inches. So for me, I made the right decision because we conserved our energy for what mattered most, which is practice. But looking at this data, we need to take into account losing streaks. Maybe we got knocked out of conference. We had a tough match the day before. We played bad the day before. So numbers are going to go up and down. So you have to know, hey, these athletes might not try the next day. So about right here, we were in a big losing streak. We weren't looking good in conference, so we played bad. Then the coach has a coming to God moment, a talk with the team, and hey, they're starting to go up, they're starting to trend, and then we go back to losing. Right here, day after Halloween, obviously they're out drinking, out partying, so I'm not going to adjust based off their decisions. And then last day of training before the end of the season, everybody wants their jumps to go up. So they're going to try harder. And of course, that's when we're going to get a lot of our PRs on counter movement. But from a strength and conditioning standpoint, I can look at this and save it for the next year. So I know, hey, what worked well, what didn't, from maybe we needed to attack them hard in the weight room, even though they were having 2 days in the gym. And then I can see that our peaking work towards the end of the season, everybody was feeling good. We had zero soft tissue injuries. So I did my job correctly. And I think from what I did this fall, we can adapt it into next season and hopefully keep those injuries at a minimum. So applying the data for me with vertical jump versus RSI, that's more important in volleyball. So a low RSI usually means an inefficient stretch shortening cycle, which is the pre-stretch or counter movement action that allows the athlete to produce more force and move quicker. So just with counter movement jump and neuromuscular fatigue testing, we can also use RSI in the same way because that will naturally decrease through training cycles. And with volume and load, it will gradually recover as we start tapering and peaking towards the end of season. So just with counter movement jumps, we can always use RSI, but that's more so up to coach preference. So change of direction ability with volleyball, I believe RSI is more important for middles because they need to be able to shuffle over, get off the ground as quick as possible to put up a block rather than an outside that is coming from the 10-foot line and needs to get high off the ground and put the ball on the ground. So depending on position, you might attack one rather than the other. So looking at the graph in the top right, so obviously quadrant number one, they have high RSI, they have a high vertical, that is a solid athlete. So when we're graphing this in Excel, we can have the team average be where we're trying to graph against. So you should be able to know if your entire team is just unathletic, all right, I need to know that so I don't see someone in quadrant one and be like, hey, they're a good athlete. But if you know it's a good number and they're in quadrant one, you're like, all right, we can work on something else. Obviously, quadrant two, high RSI, low vert. So we're going to quadrant three, low RSI, low vertical. If you look in the lower left corner with that graphic, they need more, they just need work overall. Overall strength work, nothing specific. They just need more ground contacts. So mixing up plyos, I like to put plyos in the warm-ups because if you warm up with plyos every day, hey, they're getting that ground, they're getting easy ground contacts. So nothing specific, they just need overall work. You go into quadrant two, high RSI, low vert, they need strength training. They can generate that force fast, but they can't produce a lot of force. They're not getting high. So that's easy to do. Just get them stronger. Quadrant four, they just need speed training. So they're strong, they get high off the ground, but they're struggling to produce that force fast. So speed work, whether it is assisted plyos, over speed, or just more pogos, they need more speed work so that they can get off the ground quicker, which in volleyball, that can be a big deal. So quadrant one, they're just balancing both. So we can use more advanced methods because more than likely they're not going to improve by 20% in a semester, whether it is vertical jump, RSI, 10-yard sprint, whatever it is, they're going to improve in small increments. So if they're steadily improving, they got to realize, hey, their teammate improved by 30%, but their teammate also did not come in as developed. So I have a freshman who came in, she just tested, has a 1.9 plus RSI and a 26.1 vert. So I know, hey, she's just a gifted athlete. Now we just need to get her stronger because I believe that number can get up to a 2.2 plus RSI and a 30 plus vert, rather than a freshman that comes in, isn't developed at all. Hey, their vert went up 6 inches, but it's like, no, they just learned to jump. They got a bit stronger. So now we need to know whether this is going to be an athlete that advances really fast and everything gets better really quick, or an athlete that comes in that's more gifted and it's just going to be slow improvement. You got to show them, hey, you're good, and it's just going to take time to get better and better and better. While using the data is great for neuromuscular fatigue tracking and creating training plans, I think the greatest use of it is providing that data to the athletes. So this is an athlete profile that I have provided to my women's indoor volleyball team this winter after they just went through their testing after season. So this is my most athletic volleyball player. Her vert went up less than an inch, but it went up, and her RSI skyrocketed. So looking through all the metrics, she got overall much better. So using this, regardless of, yeah, all of this is not using force plates, but using force plates such as reactive strength index with our RSI testing or dynamic strength index with an isometric mid-thigh pull, we can substitute stuff shown on this graphic with tests that can be done through force plates. So also like Valid Performance has their force frame, which can be used for hamstring, AD duction, AB duction strength, and shoulder strength. So leaving force plates, we can still add more tests to this testing battery. But with force plates, hey, we can show them, hey, your RSI got better, your peak power got better, your vert got better. And then we can also use other tests. So, hey, you can produce force this fast. So not only are we providing athletes with their positive improvement, now, God forbid, let's say they get injured, hey, we can show this to them, be like, hey, this is what we want to get back to for you to feel 100%. Because athletes are, when coming back from injuries, such as, hey, an ACL tear, maybe we have our single leg RSI metrics before they tore the ACL, so we know where a good baseline for them to get back to is. Obviously, mentality, they have to have the mental strength to get through that injury. But if we can be meeting those physical outputs that they were hitting before their injury, we're going to be in a better place where they're going to be happy if they hit those metrics. They're probably going to be better off when they get back on the field and they're confident. These are where I got the majority of my information from, whether Hawking Dynamics with that RSA chart and bucket graphic, or Dr. Matt Jordan with the RSI explanations, and a group of collegiate sports scientists, as well as a professor from East Tennessee State University. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out, and I'd be happy to answer anything you have.